Good sign, though. We'll just have to troubleshoot if it happens. During.
I honestly think that was good. Cool. Every time I would shake it, it would go like full oil.
Yeah, just a sip of that. All right, everybody, welcome. We're finally ready to begin with Deserie Foley. Thank you for waiting so patiently. Just a few minutes behind. Welcome, everybody, on the live stream portal. Thank you for being here. Second official full day of camp disclosure. It's good stuff, and we're kicking it off with a great presentation from Deserie. Deserie Foley is the Assistant Director to PAX International, the People Against Covert Torture and Surveillance. PAX International started in December of 2015 when a group of concerned targeted individuals gathered to continue activism efforts towards our freedom from covert torture and harassment, also known as electronic harassment. Deserie and her organization's goal is to educate the general public about these technologies and obtain help for those captured in this virtual matrix. Deserie will also be sharing her story and how to heal from extreme trauma and her spiritual awakening. Please welcome to the stage Deserie Foley.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say that it's absolutely beautiful here in North Carolina, and it rained yesterday, but I think we're pretty good. Look at the clouds. I think we're going to be set today. Just wanted to say that if you guys knew how much work was put into bringing this whole event together, it would blow your mind. And I think I've been working with CL and Christy since February of this year, and I really didn't help out so much. I was just kind of just sat back and watched, but my hat goes off to those girls. They've done a lot of work. Okay, so I'm going to get started because I've already rehearsed this like 3 times, and I always go like 2 or 3 minutes over. So you might hear me talking a little fast because I'm trying to get this information out. Okay. So if you can put my, oh, thank you. Okay, so my presentation is called Escaping the Matrix. Okay, so what I'll be covering in my presentation is a brief video by Dr. Robert Duncan, my early childhood spiritual experiences, my experiences with non-consensual human experimentation, some of my evidence, my spiritual awakening, and how to heal from extreme trauma. I asked Dr. Robert Duncan if he would present a video because I can tell you my experience of being experimented on, but I can't tell you how the technology works. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. So I had asked him to do a short, brief video. And Dr. Robert Duncan will be presenting a brief video on how the Voice of God technology works and his involvement with these dark programs while he worked for the CIA, DARPA, DOJ, Navy, and Army. It's about 20 minutes. I do apologize for that, but it's a lot of information, and please try to follow. It's very scientific, but it is how the government puts voices in your head. Okay, here it goes.
Greetings. I'm Dr. Robert Duncan. I'm supposed to sort of introduce this topic to non-technical people. Non-scientific people in about 10 minutes, and that's it's a little difficult. I love great challenges. My education is multiple degrees from Harvard and Dartmouth, Ivy League schools, classes at Stanford, MIT, but my real education was in the CIA, the DARPA, and the Army, Navy, and some other institutions like the Department of Justice and the IRS. Just being shuffled around as a scientist, I got to see quite a bit of things, and I thought I was doing good for the world. I really did, and for my country, I was very patriotic. But we are here to discuss something that has been developed far long ago. I was only one of the many scientists in the area of improving the weapons capabilities of this system. And they're called neuroweapons. And you know, the good goal was supposed to be we can behaviorally modify any human being on Earth, and that includes soldiers or other humans that oppose the United States without bloodshed. Well, it turns out these weapons are far worse than nuclear weapons. They destroy the mind. They can be used for, let's say, changing gun laws in a country and create Manchurian candidates and shooters and stuff. So the CIA has been keeping this research incredibly secret for quite a long time. I got involved, she's a very young age, but what I'm here to do is introduce this topic with our host and to give you just a sense of just a few of the technologies that can do this. We're so advanced now, we can make you think, feel, or anything we want. So, I've worked on projects such as written the artificial intelligence code, track the Soviet nuclear submarine fleet, voice morphing to trick enemy commanders and signal intelligence intercept, helped the federal, local, state databases for the Justice Department to be integrated. I've worked on robotic surgery and medicine, a whole list of really neat and cool technologies, which also includes reading the brain signals and controlling robots. And so that really got me into the research in the last few decades of brain to computer to AI to brain networks. So it's not just brain to computer interfacing that we're studying anymore. It's how do you pipe signals in a feedback system to other brains, other AI systems. We call them hive minds or brain networks. And these have some really fascinating implications for the future of mankind. The 21st century will be known as the age of spiritual machines and soulless men. The host of this presentation is Deserie Foley, and I think she's going to talk about her experiences of being a target of some of, I just have to take a deep breath, of our research on human beings. And you can imagine that this is a war tool first, before all the beautiful and great things that can be done with it. I disagree with its secrecy, clearly. I've been an advocate for human rights and against secret torture and mind control for quite a long time as well. But the public doesn't seem to even understand what the issue is, because they don't understand the technology. They don't understand that we can control brains. Your very signals we can nudge in any direction, subliminally or overtly in many torture cases. And Deserie wanted me to give you a brief introduction to at least some of the basic concepts and technologies used to induce no-touch torture, pain in the brain, perceived as pure pain, I mean, for a human, but it does very mild physical damage, but there are secondary and tertiary health effects, obviously, from torture that can lead to death and worse. The mental scarring never goes away. So let me get started on that. I think I have about 10 minutes to do a very complex presentation, but I'll try to make it as simple as I can. Okay, let's get right into it. I need to talk about directed voice sound weapons, and it goes much deeper than that, but let's do some of the unclassified stuff. Directional sound weapons such as LRAD, which is a long-range acoustical device, is what that acronym stands for, but it's used in crowd control and can send a message at a very long distance to disperse crowds at a very loud volume. The audio spotlight is a phased array, which just means a set of transmitter speakers, and what they do is emit an ultrasonic sound that you can't hear from any individual speaker, and then they use beamforming to focus it in a very specific direction on an individual or place, or bounce it off of some other wall or object. Lots of trickery can be done with it. And it's quite clever, the inventor who created it. And I'm dividing this up into some different categories, and this is by no means a full list. I just need to go through this to show the development of where we are with our trickery of putting voices into people's heads. Bioheating is one of the very old, but it's not talked about much, technique called the Frey effect or Frey effect. It's a radio microwave spectrum hearing effect, and that what it actually does, if you ask Dr. Lin from the University of Chicago, is it heats the brain slightly, which causes it to expand, and then when the energy's gone, it contracts back. But this is done very quickly, and it vibrates the inner ear to then create the sense of sound. There have been no studies on how good that is for the brain. I assume it's a series of small concussions, but we'll remember this. It's an Army tool that they pulled off their website called V2K, and you can't block it by plugging your ears. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but biomechanical methods such as bone conductance. There are headphones which will transmit sound through your bones. You know, as a child, you probably put a spoon or fork in your mouth and then flicked it, and it sounds very loud, like it's coming right out of your ears. We can do this for with skin tissue that's close to the bone. All the bones are connected. There are ways to even heat the bone to make them vibrate, which then goes in the ear. And that's a biomechanical process for creating the perception of sound in your head. There's the electromagnetic biomechanical, and this was recently introduced by MIT, but it's been known far before that in other laboratories. And it's a laser light modulation with the atmospheric water vapor. So they modulate the laser to heat the water vapors at that specific point, which comes across as sound vibrations to the human. Now we're going to get into some more things that involve ethics, gene manipulation and insertion. And so in the public sector, we talk about blue light mice, where they've inserted a gene into the development of mice that is responsive to stimulation of the ionic channels of the neurons, and hence pulsing blue light, and that's the frequency that it's responsive to, alters the patterns of the mice brains. And, you know, we can do this in other ways. We've studied this for at least 60 years. These ionic gradient protein genes, we can do in other frequencies, or we can add magnetosensitizers. I don't know, let's use some examples, spliced into airborne viruses or vaccines. And, you know, I know there'll be a lot of conspiracy about that, but this is the way we think in the secret government. Next slide. Now, I have to cover something called hypnosis, because it's very related into how we do some more sophisticated methods of encrypted neural speech. And so the CIA had an old tool called REHIC, and it stood for radio frequency hypnotic intercerebral control. And really, let's bring it down to what maybe the audience's experience of, if you've ever been to a nightclub or seen a strobe light or heard what's called binaural beatings. If you look at your electroencephalograph over time, depending on the human, you will see the brain frequency match those stimuli. And I call it the firefly effect, and that's how we manipulate cultures. Everyone wants to belong, what is cool, fashionable, etc., accepted by society. It's a firefly effect, but we do it directly through neural entrainments to make people conform. I'll get into that more. Another effect you could experiment with, you close your eyes, you're in the dark, strong magnetic pulses stimulate a retinal response called the magnetic phosphenes effect, and you can see the flashing, you perceive it as a flashing light, even though there is no light. And that's just stimulating the retinal cells to emit a nerve response. The overall technique is often called frequency follows response, FFR, and it's important for a lot of, for example, in the U.S. Air Force in the 1970s and the Navy, they used it to align brain pathways for auto-association of macro and micro circuits, but they were doing brain-to-brain and then trying some brain-to-computer interfacing to control machines, to read each other's minds. It was very basic research at that time. But alignment of the pathways of the major circuitry is important. And there are many more sophisticated techniques we use today. Now, we're past the boring stuff. We get into the really interesting research that we're doing. And there is no way to separate this next method from and a gray area of secrecy. I don't know who's allowed to know about this. From cognitive modeling, the whole model of the mind. Yes, all the senses can be bypassed from the peripheral nerves. So let me go to the next slide. So in order to hack the mind or enslave it, the hack needs a known stimulus like echelon, and you'll have to look that up if you don't know. Knowing what you're listening to on radio or TV, or perhaps back to what I referred to with the Army, the microwave hearing effect, called V2K, to pipe specific speech into the inner ear's perception, which is turned into nerve impulses, grossly termed EEG, electroencephalograph, and magnetoencephalograph patterns, would also work as a starter. There are numerous ways this can be done. These are just a couple examples. Those impulses or neural responses are autocorrelated into a cognitive probability model specific to that person and influence pathways. The same effect can be achieved with direct human-to-human brain plasticity, but the technology is far beyond that now. Eventually, meanings of words are captured and so on until a nearly entire cognitive model is produced to some fidelity. These mind slaves are utilized for many intel operations unbeknownst to them. Such uses can include mass shooters who heard voices with the greater agenda unbeknownst to them to take away guns and gun rights. The entire process takes from months to years, and not just all projects are successful, depending on the complexity of their minds and external stimulus and influences. A similar technique is used in hacking, copying artificial intelligence systems, except the stimulus inputs are different and output responses, obviously. This process of discovery of biological mind requires a bidirectional stimulus, recorded response for analysis, if not done directly to another human. Every small circuit correlated to the target's biospectrum is amplified by the energy of the synaptic neural mapped out pathways for the desired effect. So not much energy is required to amplify the biosignal, as it uses the body's own natural ion regenerative mechanisms to recharge them. At this point, it is basically synthetic telepathy and what the military calls low probability detection. Just verbal commands can be issued or the inner voice of the target deciphered while they type their passwords or talk to other people. These methods are often redacted to Congress and the public for intel gathering. For a simple example, it's easy to pick out a heartbeat from the other summation of the autocorrelated biosignals, i.e., all the body, brain, electrical, and magnetic activity. Induction of higher level functions of the brain, such as hearing and other senses, are thereby achieved bypassing the peripheral nerves, but inducing the same perceived experience, useful for no-touch torture as an example, and that is useful for depatterning the brain and reprogramming. I don't nearly have enough time to get into details of the signal intelligence and psychological operations involved. But I assure you that it is an incredibly brilliant. The most likely source of the VLF signals from ionospheric heaters, which cause extremely low frequency waves in the magnetosphere and are useful as part of the full spectrum electronic fence around the Earth, I can't talk about. It is unfortunate in order to scale this worldwide weapons system, artificial intelligent personality chatterbots scripts are used with a twist of emotional neural pattern overlays to make them more engaging and realistic as a spiritual guide or a god, a devil, demon, alien presence, or blame other countries. But That's the psychological warfare operations divisions. Those identities are just false flag techniques, which again I don't have time to get into. But the interesting research is in the interconnectivity of multiple minds together and those hive mind groups connected to others in a much larger network, and how to influence them without their knowledge. They experience it as intuition or extra senses, which we used to call ESP, in the more subtle modes, as this following video will describe.
University. They had 3 monkeys with chips in their brain. Each of these monkeys can only see in 2 dimensions, 2D. But the monkeys together are rewarded with a treat, with some good food, if they can move a dot on the computer screen in 3D space to the right location. Well, each of these monkeys can't do it alone because they can only see 2D. They can't even move in 3D. But together, all 3 of those brains learn how to work together to consistently move the dot to the right 3D location. That finding is actually amazing. What it is telling us is that when multiple brains are wired together, they can perceive the world in a way that a single brain might not be able to do. They are collectively working as a single intelligence. Now, the monkeys aren't consciously aware that they are wired to other monkeys' brains. They don't have to know that. They are actually just getting the information and perceiving it intuitively.
So this is what they'll allow you to know in the civilian sector, and Duke University does a lot of these experiments on our nearest cousins. But when it's done to humans, and unfortunately we've done a lot of experiments on humans non-consensually since World War II, and they can act, I call it the empathy machine. They can feel each other's pains and hear each other's inner voice, and we rewire them in a lot of different ways that bypasses the normal peripheral.
I think it only had a minute left anyways, but I still need my PowerPoint presentation up. Well, even my computer stopped working, so it has something to do with the... No. It just paused it.
So this is just pause. Can I unpause it?
Yeah.
Spacebar. Does that work?
Yeah. Did you all understand that? It's very, very hard to understand. It took me a little while, too, to understand how this technology works. It's so scientific. Right now, I think it's just the rain. I finished the main part of it. Again? Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I hope everybody understood that. I do appreciate Dr. Robert Duncan for doing that, and he's very brave to come forward with the information that he's been giving us, and we've learned so much from him because you can just see it in his eyes that he wants this to stop, and and he feels bad for the things that he has done in the past. Okay, so I am going to talk about my early childhood and spiritual experiences. I want to talk about it because I just want to bring a little bit of light to the conversation, or the next part of my presentation is going to be a little dark. Okay, so I remember my first childhood experience when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I remember that my mom and dad were going to sleep in the living room on the floor because we usually would do that, and I decided I'm going to go to my bedroom to go sleep in my room. And I was laying down in my bed, and I had about 4 or 5 different beings walk into my bedroom, and they weren't like solid beings. They were blue, transparent looking beings. And when they came into the room, I remember looking at them, and I can actually see through them. But they weren't ghosts either. So I don't even know what that was. I remember them coming around, and then they paralyzed me. I was paralyzed, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And one of them sat on the bed with me and lifted me up. And I remember thinking in my mind, because I think the being thought it was funny, that I said, who are you? You don't look like Jesus. And the being was like kind of like laughing, or he thought it was kind of funny. And then he did say that he loved me. And then I responded, I love you back. And I don't understand why I did it. It was almost like a higher aspect of myself knew who this being was. Okay. Do you want to fix that? Okay. So that was, and I remember after they left, I woke up and I was like screaming for my mom, and I didn't understand what had happened, and it didn't make any sense to me. I was, grew up Christian, and no one ever taught me about beings like that, so I didn't understand it, and then I kind of just didn't talk about it. So throughout my whole childhood and teenage years, I was constantly under attack by low vibrational beings, but I'm not going to tell those experiences because I'm not going to give them a spotlight. So my next experience that I had is when I was about 23 years old, and I was with a person that I ended up marrying. So he wasn't my husband at the time. We were getting ready to break up, and we both were like devastated. We were crying. Things weren't working out, and we had decided, okay, we're going to break up after this. So we go to sleep that night, and I remember that I was falling asleep, and this is where usually the beings will come in, is right before you fall into sleep, when you're still in this reality and you slip into the next. Right in the middle is where they catch you. So I was in my bed, half asleep, half awake, and this light being walked into the room, and it didn't have a physical form. It was just pure light. And I immediately looked at it, and I can remember, this is what I remember the most, is the way that I felt about the being. Not just the feeling that it felt for me, but the way that I felt for the being. And I often describe it as the kind of love that you have for your children, for your pets, your mom, dad, brothers and sisters, your best friend, and even the love you have for your significant other, that being in love. All towards one being. And I would say it was pure love. It was all the loves you can think of. And it walks in, and I'm going crazy. I'm like, take me with you. And I'm begging it to take me with I didn't want it to leave me here. I couldn't imagine living the rest of my life without this feeling. And the being tells me, it's a light being, tells me, Deserie, I am not here for you. I'm here for him. And he points at, we soon to be my future husband. And then he leaves. I get up. I start screaming, and I start throwing myself against the wall, literally throwing myself, and then waking up, the person I was with, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, he left me here. And I couldn't, get a grip on what had just happened. And then, and by the way, he's an atheist, and I say it because it plays a big part in this. He goes, and I told him, at the time I perceived this light as God, because I didn't know about high vibrational beings, so I perceived it as God. And I had told him, I said, God told me to tell you he's here for you. And then the atheist starts crying. He starts crying, hysterically crying, and said it was the first time he's ever prayed and said, God, if you're real, prove it. So that was an amazing experience that I had with him. Okay, so we're going to fast forward here about 10 years after that whole incident with the light being. I ended up marrying him, and throughout our marriage, we were together about 11 years, and he was always in school. He was considered a genius, one of the smartest people that I know. And he was working for the aerospace industry that was contracted by the Department of Defense. Then it plays a big role on the next part. So 11 years into it, maybe 10 years into it, we started having a lot of marriage problems, and and things weren't going right. Nobody was an angel in this relationship, meaning that, I'm not saying that I was this innocent person and, and he was just the bad one. We were just both not doing our part in the marriage. However, there was a lot of money involved, meaning, he had worked so hard. I was a housewife, and he knew that if we divorced, he was going to have to give me half of everything that he worked so hard for, and I didn't have a job. So he knew what he was going to get, what was going to happen to him. So I would say he had talked me into moving to outside of Phoenix, probably like an hour into the middle of nowhere. And, try to say, hey, maybe we can make things work. And I'm like, okay. So I agreed to move out there, and I was very isolated. I was taken away from all my friends, and, I didn't have anywhere to go. I just stayed home. Then, a lot of weird things started to happen to me. I started to notice that my phone was being hacked into. And it was happening for a while. I kept getting new phones, thinking there was something wrong with my phone. And it was when the Android first came out with the smartphones. So I was still like, what is this? This is acting funny. And then I started to notice that the Wi-Fi or the computers were acting funny. And anytime I would go to a web page, it would glitch. And then it would do some weird, bizarre things where it would talk about me. It would talk about me, and before I can take a picture of it, it would disappear and go back to the regular web page. And I was like, what is going on here? And then I started to notice I was being followed. I was being followed by what looked like white vans and a motorcycle gang. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, we're under investigation. We have to be. And I know it's not because of me. Maybe he's up to something, or because he's so secretive and everything that he does. Maybe, they're investigating him. And I thought it was all because of him. And I was kind of paying attention to what he was doing. Even, trying to do a little spying on him, because I was trying to figure this all out too. So I did do a little bit of spying on him, and I was able to put a tracker on him. And when he had said he was going to Home Depot, he ended up going into the middle of the desert to an abandoned trailer. And I'm not thinking any secret government stuff. I'm thinking he's cheating on me in an abandoned trailer. That's my first thought. And so I immediately approached it to him, and said, hey, I found out, what are you doing over there? What kind of girl are you taking there? You can't even take her to a nice place, And and he told me don't you ever go over there. And I was like, okay, well, I was like, oh, that's a challenge, and I never went over there, but, I was just like, why don't you want me to go there? Okay, so after that, I started to believe that I was being poisoned, but not poisoning where you get sick, like you're going to throw up and you're not feeling good and you got to go to the bathroom, but the kind of sick where my lymph nodes were hurting. They were hurting after the poisoning. I was having a hard time breathing, or I was going after the poisoning. And also, I was waking up paralyzed from the waist down. Not when I'm asleep or anything. I actually wake up. My legs don't work. You can actually take a knife and put them in my leg, and I wouldn't feel it. So that's not a normal kind of poisoning. There was something they were giving me that was affecting my nervous system. So after that, I remember it was December 6, 2013. I'll never forget the date. I had woke up at 2, 3 in the morning. Same thing happened. I was paralyzed. I wasn't able to breathe. This time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call 911. This isn't right. There's something wrong. The ambulance came and they took me to the hospital, and then everything came back. You're working as they put some oxygen on me, and I was able to get the feelings back in my legs, and then I said, you know what? I think I'm being poisoned. And then they're all looking at me like nobody says that, and trying to have me speak to a behavioral health counselor. It comes in because nobody really claims something like that. And then the doctor comes in. He says, "Well, Deserie," he goes, I will entertain the fact that you may have been poisoned only because your potassium is so low. So I'm going to run some tests on you." So he took some. I think it was some blood that he took. And as this was happening, the police were coming. They were walking up towards me, and I was like, waiting. I was like, okay, I can tell them my story and what's happening. And then my ex stops the police and starts talking to them, and I'm like, oh, great. Now they're not going to believe me now. So I ended up getting out of there, sneaking out of the hospital. I snuck out of the hospital because I knew that what was going to happen next, some kind of behavioral health hospital I was going to be put in. So I went home, and I was already scared, and I was already feeling this intense energy around me of just being scared. And the detective came over to my house and said that the doctors found an unidentified toxin in my body, and that my husband at the time was saying that I was so crazy that I was poisoning myself to get him in trouble. So that night, I remember very, very emotional time for me. I remember dropping to the floor, crying and saying, how could somebody that I love so much for so many years hurt me in this way? This wasn't a normal revenge from a husband. This was the ultimate revenge. And that night was the night I first started hearing voices. And I tell this to people, you don't go through a divorce and go crazy. It just doesn't happen. You don't go schizophrenic because, you're divorcing your husband. And I was laying down. I was still upset, crying, and I heard these voices coming. It sounded like it was coming from the backyard, like people were walking around in the backyard. I was hearing his voice with other voices, and they were talking about me. So my first thing is like, oh yeah, I caught ya, I'm thinking I caught them, and thinking that there was some kind of camera or something, because they were talking about what I was doing. They were like, oh, she's walking into the room, or now she's doing this. So there I go looking for cameras. Okay, so after that part, I was like, okay, things aren't working out. I got to move. I got to get out of here. This is crazy. I got to get out of here. So I ended up moving into a new house, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to start my life over. He's not going to be able to gaslight me anymore. And, cause he was, really trying to convince me that I was crazy, and I was almost submitting to it. So after I moved into this house, and, I got there, and then things got really, really bad here. there was almost like poltergeist activity going on into the house. I was also being followed and harassed on the internet by a satanic group. They were sending me messages with demon names on their profile pictures, telling me that they want my soul. And they were also sending me links to seances they were doing. And I was like, I cannot believe that, with all this stuff happening with him, and then now this stuff's happening with this satanic cult. Like, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? So there was, I remember I was in my house, in the new house that I was in, and I was like, I screamed out that these people that are doing this are nothing but devil worshippers. And then my crucifix flings off the wall. It flings off the wall, and then throughout the house, the lights were always flickering, and even sometimes the lamps weren't even plugged in. There was always this kind of like energy going through the house, and I didn't understand it, and I knew that it was some kind of radiation. That's what I would call it. It would be some kind of radiation that would go through the house. And then when all that was happening, I started to feel the directed energy weapons, and it would, hit me in the head, and it would make my brain tingle. And sometimes I would go have a seizure from it. So, and then there was one time that I went blind in one of my eyes, and then there was this other thing that they were doing to me, which Dr. Robert Duncan calls it heterodyning, where they're able to take somebody else's brain frequency and then share it with yours. And this is what I believe. I believe that there was a brain frequency that was taken from somebody. It was like if like somebody was like sitting right there, and they're sitting on the chair, and somebody has a knife and they're about to kill him, and that person knows they're going to die. It's like that brain frequency was taken from that individual and put into me. I was in my house scared, and I called it the scared of the nothing. There was nothing there, but I was scared like at any moment I was going to die. I was locking myself up in a closet. And the reason why I will lock myself in the closet is because I can see all four sides, and that nobody would come up behind me. And all this time this is happening to me, I have my children. And my children are watching it and witnessing it and not knowing what's wrong with mom. So I started to... this was going on for about a year, with the gang stalking, as far as them, running me off the road. They would harass me anywhere I went, harass me online, harass me in my mind. And there's only so much somebody can take with all of that trauma happening to them. And then, of course, the voices, they were waking me up in the middle of the night, making me read Revelations, trying to convince me that I was some kind of a prophet, and that's why this was happening to me, which is BS, because that's what they do. They like to trick you, so you sound crazy when you tell people, oh, God's talking to me, God said this, and then I was doing it. I'm guilty of it. I was doing it, and I did isolate myself from actually they isolated from me, because they didn't want anything to do with me. I was at a so low vibration. They didn't want to hang out with me. They all thought that I was crazy. Okay, so then they started putting me asleep, and I knew this was happening to me. I would call my mom and dad. I would say, Mom, please help me. Please help me. They're putting me asleep, and they're coming in, and they're doing stuff to my body. And my mom, of course, they didn't believe me. And I understand it's a very hard thing to believe. They didn't believe me. But when they were doing this, they were, I knew when they would put me to sleep. It was some kind of frequency when they would put me down. And they were coming into the room, and there was only one time I woke up during it. And I did hear a lot of commotion in my house. And I didn't see anybody, but there was a lot of people in the house talking and a lot of commotion going on. And I woke up with my whole house smelling like a tarp. And also I had like holes or injection sites inside my throat. So I knew I had them. Like, what are they injecting me with? What are they doing? Why is this happening? So after that had happened, during the whole cracking of the mind, and they were patterning my brain so I can be reprogrammed. This is what they were doing. I was no longer the Deserie that I was before. I don't know who I was. And honestly, if you would have met me during that time, you wouldn't be able to have a conversation with me. I was completely lost. My mind was gone. So I remember there was, through the trauma and all the stuff that I was going through, I started to notice these special abilities that was coming. I had X-ray vision. It was almost like it was sonar vision. I was able to see with my mind and not with my eyes. And it was like I was seeing through the walls. I was seeing through everything, and everything was black and white. But then when a human came along, I can see their frequency, their color of them, and it was all with my mind. And I was also able to come out of my body at any time I wanted and get into other people's body. And that's how I was using it as a weapon to fight against this. It was like my empathy abilities. It was empathic abilities that was on steroids. And I was like, oh my God, this is a gift from God. But it probably wasn't. It could have been three things. Either my DNA was activated from the torture, or they could have activated my DNA, or they had given something to intensify those abilities. It's almost like the whole experiment with the super soldiers. So after that had happened, and I'm going through all this, and I was telling my brother, who's a pastor, and I was like telling him what was happening to me. He didn't believe me either, but he's like, okay, Deserie, I'm going to have you speak to one of my friends who's a pastor that lives in your city. So I went over to the church, and I got to know the pastor and his family. And obviously my brother was telling him all the stuff that I had been experiencing. And, so there was one day I was at the church because I was ready to surrender. I had nowhere else to turn. So I was there, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to give my life to you. And, and I'm like there. And then the pastor, you never go to the church and you think that the pastor is talking about you during the message? Okay. Well, he started to say some things about, the way people live their lives. And, I wasn't living the best life that I should have been living, especially when I was going through all this. Everybody got up at the church. Everyone stood up, and then they went and walked towards me. And everyone put their hands on me. And they started to speak in tongues. I was crying hysterically, but not because I felt the Holy Spirit. But I was crying because I was embarrassed. I was very embarrassed that they were doing this to me. How could they point me out like this? And I didn't give consent for that. So I'm over here crying as they're doing it, and it's a little odd to me, with people speaking these tongues. I'm like, what are they doing? As I'm crying, I'm laying there. You're not laying there, but sitting there with my head down, and I have my eyes closed. And I saw black. I saw black in my eyes, in my mind's eye, and this light being, this beautiful light being comes into my mind's eye. And he does this to his hand. And when he did that to his hand, something came out of me. And I am not one of those people that will say that, you go to church and you have the pastor and then they're, talking to him and the guy goes limp, or, I'm the first one that called BS on that. Well, it happened to me. My body went limp. And something came out of my body, and I realized that through this whole torture process that an entity had came in. It had attached itself to me, and it explained a lot of the negative thoughts that I would have, the thoughts that I wouldn't normally have. I had it in me. I was mad, but I didn't understand what happened. So I ran out of the church. Crying. And then I realized that everything was in HD. Everything. The colors were brighter. Everything was more vivid. I felt light and clear. And I was like, what was that? So I ended up going home. And then I got there, and the entity had followed me. And it made itself known to me. It was materializing into the curtains. And I was like, oh my God, is this an entity or is this technology? Is this, because I'm confused, because how could this be happening? It doesn't make any sense why this is happening to me. And I found out later, and I do want to say this, that the difference between there's cloaking technology and there's actually entities. And I think that was some kind of cloaking technology, just because it didn't have the normal feelings that it should have had. And I was dealing with the whole cloaking technology as well. They were coming in and lifting up my mattresses when I was asleep and letting it fall to wake me up. So I know that has something to do with, cloaking technology. And I found out later from another person, I work with a lot of targeted individuals, that they said that when they're using the cloaking technology, all you have to do is grab a mirror and put it above you like this, and the mirror has to be in motion. And then that's when the cloaking technology will start malfunctioning. So do that if you ever think that you have some cloaking technology around you. Okay, let's see here. No, it would be, you would point it up like this so you can see, but then it has to be in movement, and then that's when the technology will glitch. Okay. Yes. Yeah, facing you. Okay, so this right here is a documentation from Muck Rock, a nonprofit news corporation that specializes in filing Freedom of Information Act documents, received this document and some of the stuff that they requested. We don't know if it was on accident or on purpose, but this will tell you. It's not. Is it on there? Oh, it's not on there? Okay, that's okay. Okay, so this documentation just shows the different things that they're able to do to the body, and I wanted to bring this up because I can explain a lot. They're able to move your limbs by themselves. They have control over your body, and they're able to do that. They're also able to do dream simulations, and okay. They're also able to do dream simulations, and that's what the kind of program that I'm in now, because them torturing and cracking my mind was the first part, and now I'm into another part or another program where they're putting me in dream simulations, and every night it's some kind of simulation. It's always sci-fi. It's always, them trying to make me believe that I'm being abducted and that I am working on a spaceship and I'm working with hybrids and that I'm the one that is doing the experiments, and also that, we're building consciousness, and we are doing all of this like sci-fi stuff that I'm just like, you guys are silly. But there are times that when I'm in the simulation, when I'm in the dream simulation, when I'm in there and I'm walking around and I know that I'm in the simulation and I start screaming, I'm in a simulation, then it starts, the program will start to glitch, and then I'll wake up. And I kind of caught on to it. I know what they're doing, because for a little while I really believed that I was having these experiences when they weren't true. So you see how they are with their trickery. Okay, well, you can't really see my next. Oh, I have a lot of evidence to show you, but okay. I actually working with a team of experts, doctors that are helping me. I did sign a non-disclosure agreement on, showing some of my evidence. That's just to protect the experts that are helping me. But I was given permission to show some of it. I do have, okay, let me go back here. 2018, I was poisoned again, but this time I was already working with the targeted individual community, so I already knew a bunch of doctors and scientists. So I had called a doctor and said, hey, I was poisoned again. I would love to know what they're giving me. I would love to know. And she had told me to send a hair follicle to her. I sent it to her, and the test results came back about 3 weeks later, and it was a formula for self-assembly semiconductors. And my doctor is a toxicologist, and she was actually one of the toxicologists for the Aaron Brockovich case. She's a very well-known person. And she said, Deserie, as soon as this comes back on, I'll show you the formula for it. I was allowed to show that. So she said, if you have this recipe or this formula, then you have semiconductors in your body. So I was like, okay, so I knew all this stuff was like happening to me, and I was like, okay, you know, I never really thought that I could have been chipped. And it wasn't just like one chip somewhere. I have a whole body network of chips that all work together and they all have a function. Not yet. How am I doing on time? Okay, just let me know, okay? Because 15 more minutes. Okay. Okay, so the full body network, they all have a function, and okay, so how I got this information was was flown to a different state by my doctor has set it all up, and they weren't going to give me the enclosed location to where I'd be going. I was picked up at the airport by two gentlemen that, you know, do these special tests, and you know, they're very secretive about it. They were okay. They took me. They picked me up and they took me to an underground facility that was in a bank vault. It's okay. Okay. So I was put into this bank vault, and they were able to not only identify where the semiconductors were, they were even able to capture the frequencies that my body was emitting. I was emitting 6 different frequencies from my body, and they were able to capture those, and then they said that the government does not have to license their frequencies. They do not have to license them. However, we were able to use our back channels and find out who owns these licenses. And it was 5 different entities. 3 were military, and the other 2 were tech. Or it was a tech company that were merging AIs with humans. So those were the 5 entities that are targeting me. And I know that what they do is that they have these certain frequencies that you emit, and they can sell you off for more experimentation. For medical facilities or universities, they're able to sell it off to whoever they want to for more experimentation. Once you're in this program, nobody gets out. I haven't met anybody that has gotten out of this. You know, we're still working on it. I don't know what to go next. Let me see. Thank you. No, I'm going. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, so let me go back here. Okay. So this is the formula for self-assembly semiconductors, and you can see it ranges from a 0 to a 10, and everybody here has nanotechnology in them. They have a 0.3, that's through the chemtrails or whatever you want to call it, and the nano that was found in my body was at a 4. And anything over a 5 will show up in a blood test or urine test. That's why they keep it at this much, so it can't be identified. You would have to get a hair follicle done. And the right here, the GTP gamma radioactive, that right there, my doctor said is basically like the same kind of radiation they give cancer patient chemotherapy. And she said that is given to me. That's probably what hurts me so much when it's given to me, and that is to boost the semiconductors, to give them a boost. This is right here to show you how small the nano is. That's a hair, if you can't see. Okay, this is courtesy from Edge of Wonder. We have pictures of semiconductors. However, I can't use it. It's real evidence, so I wasn't allowed to use it. But Edge of Wonder recreated it for me, so I was able to show them a picture, and they recreated them. And you can see the nanowires right there. They connect to the nervous system, and it uses your own material. So if you were to go get an X-ray or anything like that, it would never show up. And these are the spots that I have the semiconductors. The whole body network, they all have a function. And this was one of the frequencies. I just posted this one. I have 5 other ones, but this was like the main frequency. This one is telling me that I broadcast about 20 miles out. I'm pretty much a Wi-Fi signal. And this is what the report tells me is, you know, what they found. That red frequency is me. That's what's coming out of my body. Okay. All right, so let me talk about a lighter thing. My spiritual awakening, which it was a very beautiful thing that happened. 2015, I started the nonprofit organization because I was going to take my trauma and I'm going to help other people, because there's no help out there. You can't call the police, can't call the FBI, you just can't do that. You have to work amongst each other to try to find solutions on how you're going to fight this battle. So 2015, I started a nonprofit organization that calls people against covert torture and surveillance. And there's a lot of us, more than you would ever think, a lot of us. And we come together and we have board meetings, we have events, we have events like this. We protest. We do a lot of stuff, but nobody pays attention to us. I'm telling you, nobody pays attention to us. 2015, I met a person named Richard Dill. And I met him through the organization, and I started talking to him. We ended up getting together and having a beautiful relationship, him and I. And he was also being targeted too, but his targeting was a little different. He was being data mined. And what that means is that he would hear voices all of the time, and they would start with a sentence, and it would make his own thoughts finish the sentence. Like it would be like, "How are you feeling today if you did?" And then he would finish it. And they would go over and over and say it, and every time he would think of something different, the AI would tell him, "Oh, you never thought about that. That's the first time you ever thought about that." So he was going through it a lot. We were coming together and say, "Hey, let's fight this together. We can do this together." We end up, me and Richard I end up getting pregnant and having a son, and we end up giving him up for adoption because we didn't want him to be experimented on. And so it was like a very close, I got really close to him. He was everything to me. And I would say in 2016, around October, he started to lose his mind, completely losing his mind. And I knew what he was going through. I went through it already. And I was watching him. If you ever saw that movie, The Beautiful Mind, where, they're up there and they're writing, on the walls and, and doing all this, like, trying to decipher codes and stuff like that, okay. Yeah. That was Richard saying hi. No. Okay. So he had, Richard had, was losing his mind, and he was saying that the invisible people were after him. And I know their tricks they play, and I was seeing what he was going through, and every time he was around, the walls were breathing. They were going in and out. They were breathing. There was some kind of energy field around him. And I was like trying to help him, but I couldn't help him because he was just, he was getting kind of violent. And he was thinking that I was like hiding the invisible people. And so I just stepped away from him for a little while. Well, 2016, October 16, he ended up shooting himself in the head. Okay, this is where everything changed for me. So he shoots himself in the head. I get a call from, the detectives. Actually, I didn't get a call. They actually came over to my house. And they told me, and they wanted me to identify some of his tattoos, and I already knew that he had was losing his mind, and I remember the trauma of him with the police telling me that. I remember this is what happened. When they told me this, I ended up literally peeing on myself and throwing up on myself. That's how traumatic the news was. And it was such a, I'm like, God, like, what more can I go through? What else are you going to throw at me? So I did the whole funeral. His family didn't want anything to do with it. I had to take care of everything. So I took care of the funeral, and everything was done. There were so many people around me that were helping me. And then after everyone left, I was alone. I was alone, feeling that hammer to the chest, that heart space of just pure just emptiness and heartache. And then what I did, I was in my kitchen. I started screaming at Richard, calling him a coward, and that I would say, I went through the same thing you went through, and I didn't kill myself. You're nothing but a coward. And I was angry, and I was just so mad at him. And when this happened to me, a whole blanket of love just was thrown on me. I fell to the ground and I cried, and And I'm like, okay, either that's God, that's Richard, maybe it's both. I don't know, but it was like, don't be mad at me. So after I experienced this, this love feeling, and I was like, okay, where does the soul go? The Bible says you kill somebody, you commit suicide, you go to hell. I don't want to believe that. That's not true. So I went on this quest on trying to figure out where the soul goes. I needed to know where he went because it was very important to me. Like, how could somebody be tortured and then kill themselves? And then, so I started going to different, churches, different pastors, and asking them, trying to get in some information. And nobody had any information. And I was just like, okay. So I started looking into the near-death experiences, and I watched so many of them. And there was one in particular one that changed everything. This person had said that they were in a horse accident and they were kicked off the horse and actually died for a few minutes. But he had said that he died and he was walking up I guess to the white light or whatever you want to the light energy source. He walks up to the source and this being starts to talk to him, and this being says, I am you and you are me. I am you from the future. And it's not your time yet. You have to go back. You still have lessons to learn. And, he goes, but you can come back, but you're just going to have to do it again. And and then he was saying, I cannot exist without you, and you can't exist without me. And he said it wasn't a girl or a boy. It was just energy of love. And he said that story changed everything for me, because that was it. That's what I want to believe. That's what resonated with me. So after that happened, I started, looking into the whole dark projects and trying to figure everything out. Found this community. I just found you guys last year. I just found you guys last year. Came into this community, and looking into the Law of One, changed my life. And then I came to realize is that I came here to experience this. I am not a victim. I came here to experience this. This is my mission. My mission is to come here and to expose this evil that is happening. There is so many people that are being tortured and mind controlled that nobody will even look at them. And it's the homeless people that are talking to themselves. You think they're just talking to themselves? That's who they go after. They go after the drug addicts, the people that are on the drugs, the people who are saying the government's after me, the government's on my stuff. That's who they go after. So I think that's... How much time do I have left? Okay. I think that's... Okay. So, and then when I started to heal, I started to have these light beings come around me. And I'm going to play a video. They let me catch him on video. I see him a lot, but this was the first time they let me catch it on video. And you're going to see like little tiny orbs. But at the very end, when you see my dog walk, you're going to see a humongous orb with rainbows on it that goes by. And these beings are coming around. It's more like they're here to witness, maybe. I don't know. They don't talk to me. And even if they did, I wouldn't trust it. Meaning, I can't trust what I hear because of what they do to me. Okay, so here it is. Can you see it? Can you see it?
One more orb. Thank you. One more, because no one saw that one. Give me one more orb.
You'll be able to see the big one. And here it goes, right here.
One more, and then there you go. Thank you.
Oh wow! And that's going to be played in slow motion. Yeah, and I just believe these beams, are coming around because of the work that, we're all doing. They start to show themselves. This was in my apartment, and I live by myself. So this is slow motion. No, that's just slow motion. It just lights up the whole room. You can't really see it. Yeah. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope that you've learned something here from me. Was my mission here is to educate you about this darkness, and I hope I did my job, and I continue to do this to fight for these people that are being experimented all over the world.
Deserie, would you like to take some questions? We can have a little bit more time.
Yes, I can take some questions.
Anybody in the audience have a question? I'll hand you the mic.
I apologize, I missed the first part, but who actually started this? Was it your ex-husband or beings from the dark side?
It was a revenge crime, hate crime. I was married to a contractor for the Department of Defense.
Did he inject you with something or chip you?
Yes, he was giving me a formula for self-assembly semiconductors.
To ingest?
No, it was done in a way that I can't speak publicly. If you wanted to ask me in private, I would tell you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. You're very brave. Thank you for your courage. I know it helps.
Anybody else?
Is there a common thread that is that these programs are attracted to in people, or is it just random? Or somebody, like you knew your husband? Do they know somebody that knows somebody? Do they go after families or generational lines, or is it just random?
Okay.
How they choose people?
The number one choice for them is drug addicts. People that are on drugs, nobody's going to believe them, and it's kind of like you can't even take care of yourself, so we're going to experiment. So you don't even care about yourself, so we're going to go ahead and do experiments on you. And another thing too that I noticed too is there was a minister that contacted our organization, and such a beautiful soul. She had told me that she was a minister for the prisons, and they were there praying over this individual that was born with a half of his leg not fully grown. So she did a healing session on this individual, and made his leg grow. It made the news and everything. Put her on the target list. It's a lot of different things, but yeah, they'll go after you if you have special abilities, or they're trying to either synthetically make abilities.
Is there certain drug addicts they go after, like
meth?
Okay, it's the meth. That's okay. What? Can I ask you this? I was like heavily involved in people doing psychedelics. Would psychedelics help stop these programs, or if you like did mushrooms or lots of LSD or ayahuasca or whatever, would that counter the effects of this type of brainwashing, or would it make it worse?
No, it would make it worse. That they do use a lot of that when they do drug the individual. It's almost like they're trying to tap in, because they're able to see through your eyes and see your imagination through the technology. So they have you on these drugs, and they're able to see what you tap into in those other dimensions. So that's another thing that they like to do.
And as far as the spiritual awakening goes, would it help if could these people meditate and try to look within to stop this process against them?
That's what I'm working on. I'm trying to show them that you can heal. You don't have to live that way, but their minds are gone, and they don't trust anybody. And if I try to tell them I wanted to mess with their mind, they wouldn't trust me. So, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to live by example and to let them know that, yes, I went through it, but you can still live a normal life and not steep down to their level.
You would have to tap into their desire.
Well, they have to be deprogrammed, because they're programmed. So it would have to be like through being hypnotized and actually having somebody that knows what they're doing to deprogram them from, because they start to notice things that nobody else will notice because they're programmed, just like almost like a spy. But once they get deprogrammed, then they'll stop acting, saying, things that, like, for example, I was like really sensitized to white vans. And the number 666, I was very sensitized to it. I saw it everywhere, and I saw the white vans everywhere. I mean, everywhere I went. Okay, so somebody like a regular person were to see it, they wouldn't even pay attention to it. They're not going to notice it or pay attention to it, but somebody like me, I'm going to see it everywhere because I'm programmed to look at it and pay attention. So if I were to have somebody come and deprogram me, I wouldn't notice that anymore. If that makes any sense.
Is your group actively doing deprogramming or setting?
I
it
only
up?
know one person that's doing it, and he's very hard to convince to work with. Like, he has to watch. We have to really watch who we help when it comes to our experts, because a lot of times the targeted individuals can be more dangerous than the actual people doing it to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yo, what's up?
Hi, Tyler.
So, what are your thoughts? Because I've done a lot of research on this also. But what are your thoughts on some of these individuals who are like claim to be targeted from birth? I've heard the theory that I guess in these three-letter agencies and the governments, they understand that some of these incarnating souls are extremely powerful, and they're a threat just incarnating on this planet. So that's why they're targeted from birth. So they never really tap into that true potential, and they never become a threat. Have you heard anything like that?
Yes, I've heard it. I don't have anything to back it up. I've only heard and just different people that I've spoke to. But yeah, they say that people that they know when you incarnate here, they can see you coming through the gateway into your body, and that they put you on this target list. I do see it. Some of these people that I work with are very special. I mean, I've seen people do like this, almost like pulling orbs out of the ground and shooting them at you. And all of these people that have all these special abilities that are unique, and I see they're being targeted too. And yeah, I do believe that. I just don't have any proof.
Any other questions? All right, I guess that's it then. Thank you very much, Deserie. Let's give her a round of applause.